I'll cover 7 different points, huge news that Ford is going to be putting in motion. That at least some of it's already done, most of it's in the works, it's planned. So let's talk about exactly what those risks are and what the chances of it causing huge, even possible bankruptcy for Ford. So huge risk. What is it going to do to Ford? Is it going to pay off? So the first major risk we're going to be talking about this evening is how Ford is going to be cutting back available options on existing models. So they're not cutting back models. That's already done. Ford, a few years ago, cut back all the cars except for the Mustang. Coincidentally, the one we want to build and price tonight. So Ford cut back all cars. Industry, many other manufacturers seem to think that it was a bad idea. YouTube definitely seemed to think it was a horrible idea. But Ford has actually brought us some very exciting models since. They brought us more SUVs, so Bronco Sport, Bronco, more trucks. The Maverick, hugely successful. We will be talking about Maverick news tonight, Ford Ranger news, important must-know ordering information. So we'll get to that after sort of the big highlights of the week. And really, the highlights of the week are kind of building up to what Ford is going to be looking like between now and the next 5 to 10 years. Some of this is actually going to be taking action and be in place really soon, and you're going to notice it on dealer lots. Now, I know, Marie, you're the type that likes to walk a dealer lot and pick your perfect vehicle. So if you have less options to pick from at the factory, that doesn't bother you, right? Normally, you would never want to order under normal circumstances.
Yeah, normally I like to see it in person, see what's the difference between the models, and yeah, if they have one available, it's easier. You say, okay, I want to sign for that one, so it's easier to me. But I understand people love to order because they can do it with personalization.
I don't know how many people love to order. There's probably a very small percentage of people. I think most people were really quite upset in the last 2 years having to order.
Yeah, when they are waiting that much, they don't
true.
like it. But normally they said, oh yeah, I order my own stuff and I add this thing, and they are so proud. But with the delay now, nobody loves to order.
Well, that's part of why cutting back on options might actually pay off, because the goal of Ford is if the builds are less complicated, they want to get those builds to you much faster. And I've already seen it take place. We saw an F-150 from build to arrival, it took 2 months. And I think the real plan is actually to get that down to about 4 to 5 weeks. But they're already able to do it in 2 months. So that's back to where it was a couple years ago, because we would normally look at about an 8-week wait period. But the customer was actually very surprised. It came in very quickly. So they want to cut that back. And if they could get it really down to 3-4 weeks, that'd be the ideal top goal. But when you do sit down and you're looking at options, they're going to be dramatically cut back. So it's a risk. For example, the Ford Explorer, you won't be able to have a Ford Explorer without a hitch anymore. That will actually protect some people, because on the used market, a lot of people will have, let's say, an Explorer, and if it has an added on aftermarket hitch, most manufacturers' vehicles, if they have an aftermarket hitch, often they can't pull nearly as much, because often it means they don't have the needed oil, transmission, cooler. And unfortunately, you don't want to be fooled there. Someone desperate to make a sale will probably tell you it's going to pull the same thing it originally pulled. And they'll go, oh, look, here's the proof. That's horrible. Don't be fooled by that. Most of the time, it means there's no transmission cooler. It can often even mean that the radiator for the motor is smaller than if it would have been able to pull more. So you don't want to have a vehicle thinking it can pull 5, 7, or 10,000 pounds, and in reality can only pull 2, 3, or 4, because it doesn't have the proper cooling equipment. Because when you do pull more, you'll cause damage to the transmission, which costs thousands of dollars, or you could even blow the motor. We all know, the Ford Maverick Tremor. The Ford Maverick 4K package gives you a bigger radiator, better cooling for the motor, and better cooling for the transmission. So that's why it can pull more. If you did it with a different model that doesn't have 4K, you'd almost certainly cause some serious mechanical damage in the long run. Now we have seen, don't be fooled, we have seen some people pulling a lot of weight with their Ford Maverick, more than what's allowed. Ford doesn't build them so that the second you go 100 or 200 pounds over, you're going to blow something. And, you know, a lot of Fords, you can actually pull, you know, don't pull an extra 1,000 or 2,000 pounds. But Fords are built pretty tough, but at long term, you're going to break something. So let's just keep moving right along. So Ford, the big news, even the F-150, which has been a #1 seller for Ford, is going to be having less options. So for example, that means, you know, the XLT, XL, Lariat, Platinum, King Ranch, Limited, Tremor, they're all still going to exist. It's just once you get within that model, you're going to have less options to pick from. We see it on the Mach-E. You know, a Mach-E, you cannot add a glass roof or Bang & Olufsen sound system to the Select model. You have to go up to a premium. And that's sort of been the bread and butter of Toyota and Honda for decades. You know, you want an opening roof, well, you go up a model or two. So you end up spending a whole lot more money because you want one or two of the options that are available. It makes for much lower cost when you're building them. But the risk is long-term hardcore Ford fans, are they going to accept this? Are they going to take it? If they don't take it and they take their money somewhere else, Ford is going to be in a bankrupt situation. And I don't think that's going to be the case because I've got some really good news coming up that you're all going to love hearing. Just let me get through the next 5 points and then we'll get to why all these risks will or will not pay off. So second major gamble or risk that Ford is undertaking is that they will have less trims and options to choose from and in dealer inventory. So the first point is less options to pick from within each trim at the factory. But it's also going to be going down at the dealership. So dealerships will actually literally have within a model, so the Explorer or the F-150 or the Ford Bronco, well, within that model, each individual model, you're not going to see every single model of Bronco on a yard. You're not going to see every single model of F-150 on the yard, and you're going to see like one, maybe two models of Explorer. When it comes to the Escape, you're going to see two or three models of Escape. So less models to choose from. So let's say you want an Explorer XLT. You're probably going to have to, well, some regions will get XLTs, other regions will get STs, but dealerships are generally going to get 1, 2, max 4 models. You know, 4 models when we're talking about the F-150, because the F-150 has so many models and so many engine choices, but you will be able to most likely test drive every single powertrain option that's available for that, unless let's say you're in a region that gets Explorer STs, which is what we've been getting for the last 3-4 months. We only have an Explorer ST to test drive. That's a whole lot more motor. That's a 6-cylinder, 3-liter twin turbo engine instead of the 2.3 liter. But I love the 2.3 liter in the Explorer. It's actually surprisingly quick, and the ST is just mind-blowingly quick. That thing is made to blow the doors off almost anything on the market that's, you know, that big. And it doesn't get enough credit. But maybe that's a good thing because, you know, different clientele. It's not attracting, let's say, drag racers. So the second major gamble is less within the models, far less sub models to pick from. So that F-150, you might see a Lariat, an XLT 302 and an XL 300, and that's all you get. And if you want to order an XL, a straight XL, well, you have to order it up if you want to, you know, even just see it. So less trims available. Now, the third major risk that Ford is getting themselves into, well, of course, it's already happened. It's getting rid of cars. They got a lot of slack and a lot of criticism for this. But I think it truly paid off because we lost the cars and we won the Bronco Sport. We won the Bronco. We won when it comes to getting a Maverick. We'll talk about Maverick news and how well the Maverick is doing and some things you should know about the Maverick in a few minutes. But that was the third risk, and that one already has paid off. I don't think Ford is losing a whole lot of business because they don't have cars. And the car business, when it comes to vehicles, it was all about price. I remember I've been, dealing with Ford Focus and Ford Fiesta for a decade. And that clientele is all about price. So, if you're at $400 a month, but there's something on the market at $320 per month, everyone's running for the $320. In that group, few people want to pay the extra $80, even if it has, a better sound system, much better road handling manners. They get stopped at price. And actually, often what I would see is that they'd love to test drive, shop, buy something else that is $80 less per month, and then after 1 year come back and say, you know what? I really don't think I'm enjoying my current vehicle as much as I would be that Focus I test drove a year ago. Can I test drive it again? They test drive it. Oh yeah, I love it. I should have gotten this in the first place. Now can I switch it up? Well, here's some big news. 1-year-old vehicles traditionally have been, horrible trade-ins. The last 2 years, pretty much anything that's a year old had a great resale value because there weren't any new vehicles on the lots. And those days are over, folks. You really need to watch out these days because we're back in the old business almost, where 1-year-old vehicles, unless they're very popular, they're gonna be very much upside down. Even if you paid them MSRP a year ago, models that aren't known for long-term reliability are going to have bad resale. So you worked at Toyota, you almost never saw a bad resale. Am I right?
No. In the parking lot that we have used car, it was always the not used car of $10,000. It was we would just keep $20,000 and more. So just the good one, the big model, So a good resale value for sure.
And after a year or two, people generally could change up their Toyota. Not the case Kia, Hyundai, Nissan. Those were the big Jeep, Dodge. Those were all, except for the Dodge Ram 1500, even the Dodge Ram 1500. Those were all huge losers when it comes to resale. So I really love Outsider Reviews. I see you're adding a lot of helpful added on information. I really appreciate that. I love it when the community is having a good time exchanging information because no one will ever be the number one source. People will make mistakes, but I hope the reason you follow me is because none of my mistakes are deliberate, just to grab attention. So talking about Toyota, here is an example of trying to grab attention and have tons of views. You could make the conclusion that Toyota right now is completely beating out everybody else, that Ford, Jeep, Dodge have full lots because dealers completely screwed all their clients. All the dealers completely screwed all their clients, and now Ford and all these companies might go bankrupt because of how horribly they treated their clientele. And Toyota doesn't have vehicles on their lots because they're selling them because guess what? They're treating their clients really, really well. Well, that's a load of hooey. That's completely incorrect. Some dealers during the last 2 years, some dealers of every single manufacturer mistreated customers. Some dealers felt that because there was decades of customers getting vehicles near cost and dealerships going bankrupt because they didn't have enough money to survive, because they weren't making enough money on selling their vehicles, because it's not that hard. You can shop at one dealer, take 3 hours of time from the salesperson that properly explains you the whole vehicle, and then once you have an offer on paper, you can just go to another dealership and say, hey, can you beat this? And even if you don't show the paper because you think you're being fair, well, salespeople normally have a feeling for this and they'll just be like, well, are you going to buy it now? No? Okay. They said no. Well, I'll lower it $250. Are you going to buy it now? Until you say yes. So some dealerships, because they had been dealing with that for decades, felt now the last 2 years was their time to sort of revenge of the dealers, that they're going to get their money back for all those lost, opportunities in the past, and sort of being roughened up when it comes to pricing. I'd say if you are in a situation where you go to another dealership and you've benefited from 3 hours of someone's time learning about the product, and then you just go to another dealership, well, it's the same thing for your construction guy. If your construction guy building your house spends 8 hours making or 20 hours making all sorts of plans, getting architectural plans, so then you can say, well, here's what I can offer you for your lot based on what we discussed, filling in your needs. This would be the perfect house for you based on our conversations and all the work that I did, and it's going to cost you X amount. Of course, if you go to another builder and you're like, hey, how much would you build me this for? And they look at the price, they're like, well, the other guy really did all the work. I'm going to save 15 hours of work. It's pretty easy for him to say, I'll cut a bit off the price. I'd say out of politeness, call back your original house builder, call back your original salesperson who actually gave you service for more than 10 minutes, and say like, hey, you know what? I went somewhere else. Could you match this price? But that's on a different story. Toyota doesn't have vehicles on the lots because their production still hasn't gone up. And because their production still hasn't gone up, partially is why Q1 of 2023, their sales are down 9% when everyone's sales should be up by at least 5%. If your sales aren't up by 5%, you're doing things horribly wrong, because your production across all the manufacturers should be up much higher than they were at this time, 2022. This time, Q1 or end of Q1, beginning of Q2, 2022, there was a worldwide shortage of everything. And that's not the case. We're now living with a worldwide, pretty much surplus of everything. Wood is coming down. Building supplies are coming down in price. House prices are coming down. The cost of building a house is coming down. Food will probably even come down a little bit in price this summer. So we're in a surplus. And when you're in a surplus, businesses always have the choice. Do we sell our surplus at a better price to move it? Or do we buy more storage space? And that's for things that, don't pourrir. Sorry, French is stuck in my head. Don't decay over time, because sometimes prices need to come down because you're just going to lose your product if you don't sell it. So Toyota, the reason their sales are down 9% is 1, production is down, and 2, they're still having trouble with their dealers because their production hasn't come up to where it needs to be. So basically where Ford and GM were 7-8 months ago, because they haven't come up to where they need to be, the result, it's pretty simple. They have low inventory, and dealerships are, we'll call them markups, but they've got all sorts of these added fees. Actually, Car Edge, Ray and Zach did a great job of talking about this about 10 days ago. They're looking at two corporations that own pretty much, well, they own all the dealerships across over 10 states. So across 10 states, you want a model of Toyota, and it's going to come with a $3,000 theft protection that's actually only worth $500 or $600, and they've got all sorts of added add-ons that you're forced to take, so that the real price of your vehicle ends up being $5,000 to $8,000 more than what it's supposed to be. So that's what's going on at Toyota, and it's pretty ridiculous. We'll get to a funny video from a Toyota dealership. Well, funny, sad, but we'll get to that in just a moment. So the fourth major risk that Ford is taking is Ford themselves. They're saying that they're likely going to lose. They're planning on losing $3 billion on electric vehicles this year. Mind you, in a couple of years, they plan on making a few $1 billion of profit. So on that point, of course, losing $3 billion per year for, the next 10 years, yeah, they very well probably could and would go bankrupt. But the good news is they see the situation in a couple of years being actually profitable. So let's wait and see what actually happens there. Now, the fifth major risk that Ford is undertaking is that they are cutting the budget by $8 billion. That's a lot of money.
A lot.
That's
So they are losing 3 at one place and they are cutting 8 at the other place. So yeah, it's balanced, I guess.
So I think Ford definitely will survive. I'm not going to be one of those YouTubers that says I think Ford is going to be bankrupt within a year or two. Or 3 years, depending who you listen to on YouTube, other than us. But I'd say Ford definitely isn't going to go bankrupt, because while they're losing on the electric, they plan on making money on the electric because of upcoming choices, such as different battery choices for entry-level EVs. That is going to be very intelligent on their part. It'll mean faster charging for all of us, but with a little less range per volume. So for current volume of battery used, you'll get less range out of the same volume you would out of a current lithium ion battery. But I'll come back with more information on that. But they're going to be cutting 8 billion. And a big part of that cutting is going to come down to dealerships having to have less inventory, because they don't need to have they're obviously still going to have every model, but they don't need to have every single trim. You actually won't see certain trims at dealerships. And they're going to be cutting down like drastically. The F-150, for example, instead of there being a possible 1.5 million F-150 variation that exist, there's going to be about 150,000. So huge differences. And I think it's really going to pay off. It's going to make ordering a lot less complicated. And this build and price website from Ford, you won't waste days on it just trying to figure out which model you want, because there's just so much options. And sometimes people analyze it for so long that then they have to start all over, because every month promotions change. And sometimes from an XLT model to a Lariat, the interest rate isn't the same. Sometimes the residual on a lease isn't the same. And the result is, after 1 month, you have to start your whole analysis all over if you like to really analyze things a great deal. So they'll make that easier. So engineers are going to be happy when they spend time on the Ford website. It'll take a quarter of the time that it once took. And that's coming up in the next couple of years, and it's already started. Now, the 6th news, it's a big risk, and I think it's going to be the risk that has all of this actually pay off and function. Ford's going to have more specialty models. We love the F-150 Rambler. We really like it. We love the Tremor. You love the Tremor?
Yeah,
I love the Tremor. We actually have said we wish the Lightning had a little more pizzazz like the Tremor does. It's sad. We have a really expensive Lightning in our possession, and it doesn't have enough pizzazz. In one review of our Lightning, you even said, like, hey, you didn't understand, right? You're talking about how the Bronco had the horse logo on the seats.
Yeah, and we saw it in the dash, so I was like, yeah, you could write Lightning there and in the dash and be proud of having that.
I think that's a fantastic idea. So will these risks all pay off? Or, I think this gamble really is going to pay off. It's not going to lead to bankruptcy. Ford is going to be making lots of news. There'll be a lot of buzz and excitement around Ford, because just like how they brought back the Bronco, they're going to be using specialty models to increase excitement every year. So I think every year or two, they're going to be throwing in something new to an already existing model that normally, after the first year it comes out, there's no excitement for 3 to 4 years. Then you have the mid-model refresh on the 3rd or 4th year. There's a little bit of excitement because previously the changes were always pretty small. And then after, 8 to 10 years, then you had the big change. And then people would debate, do you like it more? Do you like it less? Well, I think Ford, we've already seen it with the Ford Escape. The Ford Escape, that's a mid-model refresh, and it's awesome. Like, it's a big change. The whole grille, the lights. I love the look of the new Escape. And why don't you tell them how you feel about the look of the old Escape?
Yeah, the first impression that I had, I was like, oh, it looks like the SUV that Porsche made. So with the light, the front light. So I was loving it. And but finally, more years and years has passed, and I'm like, I'm not sure.
I think it didn't age as well as the Porsche did.
Yeah, so now that they, I don't know if I can say that, square it up, I love it more. It looks more like an Edge now, so I think I just prefer that. But It's
Love
not
the look.
everybody who will love it.
So Ford's going to have specialty models, and actually this is directly from the mouth of a head at Ford. So Ford's going to be producing a lot of exciting specialty trims on our favorite models, and this is likely what's going to save them. And you know, they're going to bounce back from that 3 billion loss on EVs. But Jim Bombick, Ford's vice president of product development, operations and quality, said while speaking at the 2023 Bank of America Global Automotive Summit, I'm going to quote him right here. So there's 3 examples on the screen here. He clearly had 3 on his screen, with Everglades, the Raptor, and Heritage all distinctly going after different customers. This is just the start. We have a ton more coming. So that's what he said. We have a ton more coming. So Bronco people, us, let's be excited. We're going to get a lot of more specialty Bronco models that really gets everyone excited about the brand. You know, think back when they started having the rumors of the Everglades. We were all excited when they started talking about, you know, a Raptor, and we didn't even know if it'd be called a Raptor. Maybe it was going to be a Warthog. We all got really excited, and I still think Warthog would have been great, but I think some people pumped the brakes. We don't pump brakes anymore because of ABS braking, but we'll go back to the 70s. Pump the brakes. They pumped the brakes pretty hard because they wanted that vehicle to stop, because they were worried that, you know, I think people expressed some concern over the name Warthog, you know, violence and whatnot. Because of course we don't live in a violent world whatsoever. So anyways, so, you know, all of this I think is what's going to save them. And you know, you can think about what's happened already. The Tremor came out, the Rambler came out, the Ford Ranger, the new Ford Ranger, based on what you know with what he was saying, Jim Bombrick, it almost seems like we're gonna have a Tremor. Well, we already have the Tremor Ranger, but even a Timberline version possibly, because he was talking about, you know, different specialty models that have already been out. The Tremor, Timberline on the Ford Ranger, Ford F-150, Ford Super Duty, Ford Expedition, and Ford Explorer. So, and he was saying that, you know, given the profitability of those models, I think this is a great idea. You know, I can say that of the F-150s that sold, my local dealership got 8 Tremors. And while those 8 Tremors were available, I think we sold one F-150, 1 or 2 F-150s that weren't Tremor. And because all we were selling is Tremor, Tremor, Tremor. People were going Tremor crazy. And you look at the Wild Track on the Bronco, people love the Wild Track because especially now that it has, you know, essentially it has a good portion of Raptor parts in it. So I love that Fox, the Fox Haas 3.0 suspension. So the Fox suspension is fantastic. So looking forward to that. I did enjoy the test drive on the 4-door. So now getting into Ford news. So we could call this episode 2 of the live to help Marie when she's editing and cutting this up. So thank you for everyone for your comments. Please, in the comments during the show, and especially after the show, so we can read them because we enjoy them, and also so that they're there for, you know, history, for the length that this show exists on YouTube. People will be able to see your comments. So after the show, outside of the live comment section, let us know what you think about Ford's risks. Is this a recipe for disaster, bankruptcy, or is this gamble really going to pay off and have people be really excited and have more of people's attention on the Ford product?